410 damage. Ranger looks pretty good, guys, as he walks forward, putting himself madly out of position. Oh, he just destroyed that. That's a win, Intrepid. I love to hear them say smart things. Obviously, you're not going to be able to tell what's going on in PvP with this going on. He didn't use a movement ability, guys. He's actually crippled during this time. Like, what is this? Intrepid, fix it. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into the recent preview of Ashes of Creation Alpha 2 Node Wars. If you haven't seen the preview yet, you can check it out on the official channel. But for now, let's break down what we saw and what it means for the future of the game.
So, we have to jump through a few hoops before we can declare war. We don't want mayors running around in Ashes of Creation just like perma-flagging the whole world into a state of PvP.
You don't want that at all, because a lot of people that want to play this game are PvE players. The process begins with a mayor posting a war preparation commission on the mayoral commission board in the node.
This is a bit different than your standard commissions, your non-mayoral commissions, because those are generated by the system based on predicates of the surrounding area from a narrative perspective.
This commission requires hundreds of players to turn in stacks of tier 1 materials. Once the commission is completed, the mayor can initiate one of several types of wars with another node.
You haven't declared the war yet.
Oh, I haven't declared. Should I declare the war?
I mean, I feel like this is an optimal time to declare the war because we might get some...
Wouldn't it be funny if you declared war on the wrong node? In the territory war, the process, once initiated, suspends the normal punishment system for killing players, corruption, between the opposing nodes. Players from each node are flagged for combat against one another. This shows you Winstead is a level 3 node. The hostilities will commence phase 1. First node to reach 1,000 victory points. Sanctioned PvP. Each kill's worth 1. Once a war is declared, it cannot be undone. Once a certain number of points is reached, in this case 1,000, one of the sides wins. How do you score? Well, you kill the members of the opposing node and complete objectives to earn victory points. Objectives at points of interest start to spawn during the server prime time. This is cool. We have 10 Ruby locations. A couple of them are spread out. They seem to be pretty clustered up here. You can get to these 5 better than you can get to these 5. The example objectives include, in the Highwayman Hills, gathering imbued crystals, killing bandits for imbued blood, and using these materials to channel a god spike in the center of the area to siphon primordial essence to your node.
We must exert our dominance, and we can only truly achieve respect through power. And if we don't demonstrate that power to these peons that are at Winstead, then how will they know to fear us?
We're going in. So, this is my first gripe with this. You're trying to go to a territory war to exert dominance over a neighboring city-state. What does that have to do with channeling primordial essence through a god spike? Nothing. The war objectives should make sense within the game's lore, but right now, some of them feel out of place. Best alternative for this should be forward operating bases. You don't have to know anything about the lore of the game to know how a forward operating base works. And in a game like this where you're half theme park, half sandbox, you don't have as much time to tell the players a story and get them involved in the lore. So how are these objectives placed on the map? Are they even balanced at all? So this is obviously the best spot to farm is kind of between these 3 for the rubies. So it's obvious that the node closer to this side has a tactical advantage because you can occupy the area first and set up to defend it. Whereas it looks like we came in from the southeast and we have to spread our forces wide to cover all of these. See, here's Keen's perspective. They are occupying the northwest side of that courtyard, and as Steven's forces come onto this half of the zone, this is where they first meet at this cluster where these 5 crystal nodes are close together. Let's see how this plays out. Here's what they're fighting over. It looks like they may have mined a few already, and now they're getting pushed off heavy.
That process early.
This is kind of what you expect when you split one team's forces wide and the other team's forces are more concentrated because their crystals are closer together to their camp. This is an incursion into the enemy territory. It's more vital to their node. It makes sense that they have a slight advantage with their crystals being closer together. But does this system really give smaller groups a fighting chance? We'll get to that soon.
Node participation isn't just relegated to that like top 1% most active, most attentive players. You still have reasons to contribute and participate on a lot of axes.
It is a good point. And I think that's good how they have that set up. Drone Liberty does a very similar thing with their events.
And then at the end, when we need to fight over channeling this God Spike is when Zergs are supposed to come together, right? So creating a place for Zergs.
So how do small groups match up against Zergs? Channeling the God Spike equals winning the war, and that's where it's a 1-point objective where the Zerg can Zerg around. The rest of the objectives are irrelevant. So how much is each objective really worth? The God Spike is 5 times as valuable as the other objective. But there's a comeback mechanic.
In a few minutes here, some scholars are going to spawn across the POI. They'll be marked on our map, and they're going to increase the time it's required for the enemy to channel and drop a hefty amount of the materials we need to turn in to be able to channel ourselves.
But you have to remember that this is a comeback mechanic from the part of the game that's supposed to be skewed towards small groups. So if in your small groups, if you win that portion and you can channel the God Spike first, the Zerg bigger army has the comeback mechanic on their side. They can use this too. They can make your channeling take longer, and they can get an exponential return on drops from the scholars. Personally, I think the war should be limited to a maximum draft number of 50% of the lesser populated nodes population. Everyone else suffers the normal effects of death and corruption, but only the drafted can participate in key activities like collection, turn-ins, and channeling. Looks like you can have multiple people channel. Maybe that increases the speed the more channelers you have. Maybe put the tank wall in front of them. Dread is really trying to dive these channelers.
Trad, stop trying to kill our channelers. It's not nice.
It isn't nice.
I feel like Dread is trying to carry his nodes so hard.
During sanctioned PvP events, we turn off typical death penalties, right? Like you're not going to get res penalties, you're not going to get XP debt, you're not going to get durability damage. You will still drop the things you have in your inventory though.
So because you can drop stuff in your material inventory, that they can use mechanics like the crystals, and when you die with the crystals, you can take the crystals from each other. The victorious side gains a buff to experience and drops in the area the territory war was fought over. Okay, so for winning this event of this phase, they get the luck increased buff.
All of the territory associated with Highwayman Hills is ours, and the node XP from here goes to our node.
So this is going to be key to determining which nodes vassalize which other nodes.
These events are not the node war, and the node war is not just these events. Outside of the prime-timed events, there is still the war overall. And that war overall is essentially being openly flagged for PvP with the citizens of the two nodes.
Right, so if the victory scores 1,000 and each kill's worth 1, if you can kill 1,000 players before an event spawns in the server prime time, you can win the war. Right, it's a big if though, when like doing objectives in the war will give you between 50 and 250 kills, worth of points.
We have done it. Well done. Very nice.
So nobody actually won that war. They just won the phase of the war, and then they used some GM command to end the war early. The score was 800 to 200 and some. So getting the collection materials, turning them in, and channeling the God Spike in this scenario gives you a pretty big advantage. This system aims to engage players in strategic and competitive gameplay, enhancing the dynamic interactions between nodes in the game world. I do think they have a big opportunity for environmental storytelling with the commission system being predicated on local events around your node. This node
stone it. I got my
looks very much like a sandbox survival game. Survival craft has been such a popular genre.
Very cool. So there's a lot of
I think the art style's great.
Provide.
A big misconception people have about nodes and the node types is that you're going to be able to pick your node type. This is the theme park side of the game. All of these nodes have static storylines through their commission systems, and they're going to have set node types. And until you figure out what they are, you could be playing in an area and start the city up by doing quests in the area, and only once the city hits a crossroads level where the NPCs start to spawn are you going to know which node type it is.
Honestly, the shifty characters over at Winstead really can't be trusted, especially in the proximity they are to our node. So how am I going now?
No matter how trustworthy or untrustworthy they are, doing this territory war doesn't eliminate them from coming into your node and killing your players, right? The corruption system really has to be tuned to disincentivize the players from just running around killing people at will. I do know that the Unreal Engine 5 has, I think they call it texture tessellization. They have a feature where they can turn a 2D ground texture into 3D by raising the rocks out of it. It doesn't look like that's what they used here. I'd like to see that on the road, on the dirt road, so where these rocks pop out a little bit more, because the dirt road looks a little bland. I think the UI is fine. I don't think it's very bad at all. I personally like animated UI, even though it is going to take up some performance out of the game. It is a video game, and the more animations within the UI, the cooler it is. Simple as that. You're using the medium better. You don't want to play the whole game in static UI screens. It's not fun.
If you build a blacksmith, you might get some special smithing related commissions that you could elect to initiate for your players. But if you don't upgrade that blacksmith, you're not going to be able to do that.
Got it.
I think that's really cool how this game has a parallel to Civilization games and RTS games. The node types, religious, economic, scientific, and military, are the same win conditions in Civilization. A military victory, a scientific victory, an economic victory, and a religious victory in Civilization. And how a build order in Civilization in an RTS game like StarCraft is going to apply to your node. This is super cool design where you're going to have to strategize with your mayor. What is the build order of our node? Are we going blacksmith first? Are we going for weapons or armor or mounts or auction house first? What's the correct build order? What's the optimal build order for us in this biome with our classes and our archetypes? It's a really cool thing to have in a game, especially when, if you look back at the D&D roots of the game of RPGs, that D&D came from war games, from war reenactment with miniatures, and we're coming full circle where tabletop D&D goes into MMOs where you can share the table with thousands of players, and now we're getting that mix between Civilization and RTSs and the army warfare combined with the D&D experience where Gary Gygax wanted to play just one character in the army. In this game, you get to play one character in the army, but you also get to elect a mayor and strategize your army as a whole, and the systems are super cool for that. Their mounts do look awesome. This teal buffalo rhino, their mounts are pretty sick. They're pretty creative on the art side. You can see how it's just chewing here. The idle animation.
A heavy opt-in from the player base in the order of magnitude.
Wiggles its ears,
hundreds of these.
Its nose flares up when it breathes.
That'll depend on this.
If you don't know, the glint system is very similar to Silk Road Online from what I remember, where you have to go through a PvE loop and you get glint, which is not a tradable resource, and then you have to take the glint and exchange it for trade packs and then trade those to another node, which is a PvP loop. Unlike other games where you just kill the monsters and you get the gold, in this game you kill the monsters and you get a resource that you just trade in to NPCs for tradables to a neighboring city-state, and on your way to the neighboring city-state you have a PvP loop before you get to gold. And by rewarding the players with glint, that's saying not only are we preparing for war and we're going to do PvP with these people, but you're going to do a caravan run later with this glint, and during that caravan run you can be attacked by players without the corruption system protecting you or disincentivizing the PvP also. You'll notice that everyone else in the game's level 15 except for Steven and I think Luperza, the other mayor. Planendorf, please. 410 damage. Ranger looks pretty good, guys. Pretty good. I'm liking the look of the Ranger all of a sudden. You know, it's feeling a little rangery.
Those are the
I don't know how the tank wall ability was too strong. Like, does it slow people around the wall, or is there some debuff? Because with abilities that interact with the environment and not the other players, the skill ceiling's usually pretty high, but it's hard to balance because there's no numbers, right? You can't resist being trapped by the wall. There's no stats that matter with these types of abilities. The wall's there, it creates terrain, or it doesn't. You know, it's good that they're recognizing that stuff now and adjusting it without removing it from the game entirely. Watch how they play this fight out.
Yeah, that's been one of the things.
This is so organized because they have the line of scrimmage drawn between the two forces down this road here.
Earlier iterations had
and this is never going to be this organized, except maybe in very high tier guilds with high organization. Planendorf is just healing the channeler, right? He's hiding in an archway, low visibility, good cover.
Never having you on my team again, dude.
How am I supposed to rate?
I love how the
I
class
failed
kids all have a purpose.
Sounds like a skill issue.
It really feels like everyone's got a place in the fight. The mayor can dive bomb, the tanks can protect the channeler, and the clerics can protect the channeler
Better
pretty
heal
well.
Your channeler. It's gonna be death from above.
Oh no.
The rangers get up at a high angle. There's a lot of redirecting
Social
and
media
blocking going on from the tanks. It's pretty cool that the tanks have abilities to
though.
use in the neutral game.
Right in time
Normally
for
they
Briar to
don't
kill
have
me.
much to do if they're not in melee, but if they can redirect damage from the range characters, they're still useful just to have to stand next to you. And you'll see Steven's 15 level advantage here as he walks forward, putting himself madly out of position on his mage within range of 10 or 15 enemy characters, and he gets not punished at all because he's got a 15 level advantage over them and he can just teleport away.
on my target.
Whereas you should die here. This is you're being a cocky dump. There's a million players hitting you, and you're out of position, and your whole team is not with you. And you're a mage. You're a backline mage guy.
Oh god.
Know your place. But he only gets taken to half because of the level disparity. Oh, he just destroyed that. So he ball lightnings. Neris walks up at 75%. Arcane volley. Frostbolt and lightning strike. Run, Neris. He's got to be at one hit. That did 183 and shocked him. Now, Steven does have a 15 level advantage. He just killed like 3 people. Having these choke points with these bridges, super smart. With the verticality of the rocks, making it difficult to pass over other ways. The ranger here throws a trap out into the enemy backline. He throws this trap super far to try to stop their advance because they're pushing off the bridge. It's a little late because they have already crossed the choke point of the bridge. That's a quality interaction, right? That's what we're looking for quality interactions in the game. Now you'll notice they really like the use of this tank wall spell, and with collision in the game, this is going to be super cool. I think combat in this game has a huge chance to be amazing because of the tactical use of the environment. Having spells like this tank wall where you can block off choke points or funnel people into choke points is a huge skill ceiling for the game to have. And that's a win, Intrepid. That's what we want to see for the high-end PvP long-term staying power of the game. Looks like you can have multiple people channel.
Give us one more ability.
Maybe that increases the speed the more channelers you have.
Here's some.
Maybe put the
Try
tank
to
wall
push
in front of
together.
him. Dread is really trying to dive these channelers. He's trying to carry his nodes so hard.
Alright, we got a clear kill.
Nice, so the dragon
Clear
can
the enemy team
dive
up,
in
like to be
and
able to
trip
channel.
a group of enemies doing about 50 damage to all of them. It's like a little tactical nuke. Trip everyone in the area. Good engage tool, catch tool. Oh, that wall, man.
I'm right here. What did you stuff?
That wall is so strong right now when you're trying to delay the channel. The spell cast behind him warped his screen so much you can't tell anything that's going on in this frame. Look at this blurring effect. For this to be a competitive game, we have to be able to tell when people are using their abilities. Like, this is just turns your screen into goop.
We have to identify like what are the most important telegraphs for someone to be able to identify an ability that they're expected to respond to versus just the other kind of fluff and noise that it is more for the, you know, the visual fantasy of it. So we have to kind of consider gameplay information first.
That's great. I love to hear them say smart things. It's so good when they say smart things. A lot of studios, they don't do that. You know, having them chime up and say, hey, you know, we're not going to just talk the talk, we're going to walk the walk, and we know what matters because we're also gamers. That's why this game has a community. There's a lot of hope behind these guys to do a good job, and it is coming together. Right, look, between these two frames, look how far Steven goes on the right side there on his horse. Obviously, you're not going to be able to tell what's going on in PvP with this going on. You see how Vertec, between these two frames, he's just teleporting this far. He didn't use a movement ability, guys. He's actually crippled during this time. You really need to be able to follow the narrative of these fights to make the fights feel good. And if you can't follow the narrative with stuff jumping around, it's going to be a rough time. Now, they really need an animation to play while you're frozen in place like this, other than walking in place, right? Let the player know that they're CC'd with like a frozen animation, right? Not that. This looks dumb. Characters should never be walking in place and then teleporting out of their CC. Like, what is this? Intrepid, fix it. If you look at this guy's perspective, Keen's, it looks like he has a much better time playing the game. It looks much smoother.
Uncovering.
It's almost as if this Keen guy is the host. The server isn't a dedicated server. That it's a peer-to-peer connection and this guy's the host. Like, I'm not seeing anything in here from Keen's perspective with people walking in place. Every single frame you can tell and track all of his teammates. I swear this guy must be the host. They must have not even be paying for a dedicated server. Steven was not on his best
Great,
game here.
And honorable Merlethians, our city has been denounced by a rival node, the Winstead node. They know nothing of our ways, of our people, but they know something not good.
Get a 40 series NVIDIA card if you're going to play this game. You will not regret having DLSS enabled.
Bring back the trophy that is the blood. Go forward.
That is such a baby dragon cry. I know that there's an unstomachable amount of loss that players can suffer in these games when your node gets destroyed and you're getting locked out of content by bigger groups. Eventually the winners can bully out other players so much so that they quit the game and then they have no one to play with. So it's a lose-lose scenario if you don't set up the game systems correctly to where loss is stomachable by the players and that there's hope and that you can come back and dethrone these large guilds. High risk, high reward is great when you say it, but it feels terrible when you lose hours, if not hundreds of hours of progress in the game. What is going to get players to sub that $15 the month after they lose their node? It's very hard to get an unbiased review of this game. Most of the people covering the game are highly invested in the game already. Ashes of Creation and Intrepid Studios has not given me a dime, and I have not given them a dime. I'm going to be here to cover an unbiased approach to the game and give you a realistic perspective. Subscribe.